Okay, we're live. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Carolyn. Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Children and Young People's Social Care and Services Scrutiny panel. It's lovely to see you all this morning, especially on such a lovely day. The meeting is being live streamed via the Council YouTube channel, and whilst members of the public can view the meeting, they will not be able to actively participate or comment on proceedings. As the meeting is being live streamed, I would remind all participants that their conduct should reflect this. Normal rules of procedure apply with any questions or comments directed through myself, the chair, and my name is Dorothy Davison. Can we start with agenda item number 1, which is apologies for absence? Jo, please.
Yes, Chair. Apologies from Councillors Marston and Walker.
Thank you very much. Agenda item number 2, do we have any declarations of interest? I take that as a no. Thank you. And agenda item number 3, it's a minute of the previous meeting held on the 26th of April. Can we agree these minutes, please?
Approved.
Thank you. Can somebody second them, please? Thank you, Councillor. Right, we'll go on to agenda item number 5, and this is going to be presented by Executive Director of Children's Service, who's in attendance today to provide us with an overview of children's services and the service that falls within the panel's remit. The Director will also highlight key priorities and challenges for the year ahead, which might assist us when we are considering which topics we would like to include in our work programme next year. Thank you. Sue has a presentation for us, and I can see it's on screen. Thank you very much. Could you go ahead, Sue, please?
Thank you, Chair. As you say, this is an overview of children's services that falls within the remit of the panel, and I've also put some of our pressures and some of our priorities as well. It is a basic presentation which I will talk around. Rachel will come in, I am sure. I'm happy to take questions at the end. Okay, so you know that I always put our 3 children on here. Obviously Middlesbrough's got a fair few more than 3 children, but they're representing the children of Middlesbrough. Middlesbrough children matter, and our mission is to show Middlesbrough children that they matter. And in terms of our absolute priorities, if you're putting it, the pinnacle of what we are doing is to show Middlesbrough children that they matter, to give them the services that they need, the services that they deserve, to improve their outcomes. And it is very much across the whole of children's services. And I wanted to mention here that we work very much, and is growing, still work to do, in terms of one children's service. So yes, social care, and Rachel is our Director of Children's Social Care. But I've also noted on there Rob Brown, who's our Director of Education and Partnerships. More and more we are working together across the piece. We are looking at children across the whole of the service. And one very, I think, basic reason for that is that children's social care is very much about promoting improving outcomes for vulnerable children. So, for example, if you take safeguarding, where are children safest? They're safest in school. So we know where they are. We know that they've got professional eyes on them for 25 hours a week. Also, our children who are looked after. Education is something that really supports them as they grow. And we have a virtual school for our looked after children, which is based in education and partnerships. So I just wanted to give you some idea of how, although we have a separate scrutiny for education and skills, that actually we are working across the piece. And I think that's one way of addressing the systemic inadequacies that were noted in the inspection that we had coming up to 3 years ago now, and what improvements we've made since then. Also noted on the structure, we've got Celinda Schoen, who's our Head of Strategic Services. In some ways, she supports the Director of Education and Partnerships and the Director of Children's Social Care in terms of the improvement work, in terms of monitoring the improvement plan, in terms of managing the improvement board. So very significant and also has general oversight of the audit, although audit work itself is very firmly under Rachel. So just really gives us the momentum, some momentum and underpinning work that we need to continue with the improvement journey. Thank you. So the next slide, it's a really quick rundown of the responsibilities that sit specifically in children's social care, specifically in children's social care. So I've started off with Gail Earle, who's our head of early help and prevention, and she is responsible for our early help work, and that's in general terms both pre and post social work involvement. It doesn't mean that everything that our early help workers are working with at an early help level goes into social care. In fact, they do some wonderful work in supporting families who are vulnerable. The amount of work that's going on at early help is tremendous at the moment. Caseloads are high, but I think that really is testament to the work that they're doing. If you remember, when we were looking at locality working, we had early help workers in the localities and how prized that their work was. We then have Amanda Richardson-Rowe, who's our head of service for referral and assessment. And that's the front door of our service. That's the multi-agency safeguarding hub and our assessment teams. So the multi-agency safeguarding hub is what it says. It's a hub. It's the front door of children's services, which has a whole range of professionals in there. It has, for example, early help worker in there. It has the police in there. It has a whole variety of colleagues from other agencies working together as one team in the front door. Moving on from into assessment teams. The assessment teams do the sort of original, the single assessment of families. So if in the front door, it's deemed that that referral, that contact from an agency, from a family themselves, meets the threshold, meets the need, the children have the need for social work intervention, then the assessment service will do that original assessment. We then have Ben Short, who's our head of service for safeguarding and care planning. Those teams are very much the work that is child protection work and work that actually prevents children and families becoming subject to court proceedings, to care proceedings, but also takes that work into court where children are in need of significant safeguarding. And Ben also has responsibility for our frontline teams, which are our teams who are bringing through our newly qualified, bringing through social workers, growing our own social workers. Then we have Paula Jemson, who's our head of looked after children in corporate parenting. So she has the teams that work with our longer term looked after children. The safeguarding and care planning teams that I've just mentioned, they do have children who are looked after, but they tend to be children who are, in the care proceedings. If we've got longer term looked after children, they are looked after in Paula's service. And she also has the Pathways service, which is the care leavers service. So quite a wide span there, and some significant work going on there. And just as a sort of a note, really, you will know that we are inspected and monitored on a frequent basis. Ofsted have just gone out for some consultation to look at whether care leavers should be a particular focus of their inspections, not just the sort of like more general focus that we've got at the moment, but whether there should be specific focus. And care leavers may be something that although it's looked at corporate parenting, may also be something that members on this panel may also be interested in. Then we have Paul Rudd, who's the head of Futures for Families. That's our no wrong door model. I know that some of you will be familiar with that model, but we have been supported by the Department of Education and North Yorkshire Council to build our No Wrong Door model. And that's a hub where young people are where they need to be cared for by us. That is designed to offer some respite care and also edge of care work. Paul is also responsible for our residential children's homes, all of which are good or outstanding, and for our fostering service. We then have Kerry Scrutiny, who's our head of service for children with disabilities, and she has the disability service. And she also has oversight of our practice leads and also our independent reviewing officers. Our practice leads are people that have come in or people that we've brought through from the service who are specifically targeting where we need to bring our practice, to improve our practice further in terms of the Ofsted monitoring visits and indeed the full inspection, which we're expecting maybe towards the end of this year, but probably into next year. Suzanne Brennan. Suzanne is our relatively but very new principal social worker. She's in an interim post covering for the post holder who's on maternity leave. And she has oversight of our Centre for Practice Excellence, which is really our engine room for improving practice. We have our audit programme in there, we have our training, we have the Social Work Academy, which is again growing our own social workers through the newly qualified status. So very much the engine room of practice improvement. And then we have Celinda, who's our head of strategic services, which I mentioned Celinda on the previous slide. Oversight of performance and quality, inspection preparation, oversight, participation. And she also manages our she also leads on our safeguarding partnership from an organisational point of view. And you may know that our safeguarding partnership is joint between us in Middlesbrough and Redcar in Cleveland. So we have one safeguarding partnership. So that's a sort of overview of the services that are in social care that are particularly relevant to this panel. So moving on, thank you. Okay, so our strategic priorities. And again, I've moved back to in some ways to looking at our priorities overall. And these are the overall strategic priorities for children's services. And again, to show Middlesbrough children that they matter and work to make our town safe and welcoming and to improve outcomes for all children and young people. So that's, as I say, what we are absolutely all here to do. And I know that members and colleagues on this call will also be absolutely there with that. We have a strategic priority to expand the current model of youth provision, particularly in our areas that suffer high levels of deprivation. We need to evidence that Middlesbrough Council, not just children's services, not just everything, evidence that that Middlesbrough Council listens to children's voices. You may have heard mention the fact that we have a programme of young researchers who've been recruited through from schools, who've gone out and put together a survey across children in the town. We've had over 2,200 responses of what young people feel about Middlesbrough, their ambitions, and it really it's not quite yet in its formal state, but listening and reading about what our young people, I think from the age 9 upwards, think about being and living and growing up in Middlesbrough. Very poignant, some of it. Also, a strategic priority is to explore the potential for an establishment of an Eton sixth form. Very much this is part of improving outcomes for children. And our other strategic priority is deliver and extend the 50 Futures programme. 50 Futures is a programme which aims to get people into work. And if families are in work, if they're feeling valued, if they feel they're contributing value, that can go a really long way in terms of safeguarding children. So that's the overall, our strategic priorities in children's services. So strategies, in terms of directorate priorities, forgive me, this looks like a list of strategies to be delivered, and I would be quite rightly challenged on what difference can they make. I decided though, if I was to go through everything in some detail, we could be here until lunchtime. So I've just noted them. So we're delivering our strategy on participation. Part of the participation strategy is listening to children. So you can see there's a direct link there. We've got a strategy that we're delivering around workforce. We need to recruit more social workers. I think that's come through in just about every conversation we've had, really. The need to have a stable, experienced, permanent workforce is crucial to our improvement journey. Early help, we've mentioned early help earlier on. Early help and prevention, crucial to improving outcomes for vulnerable children. We need to have enough placements so that when children do need to come into our care, and we will do everything we can so that they don't have to, but we have to have placements. We have to have placements that are local, that actually meet children's needs. We've also got the pupil place strategy. We need enough school places for children. We've got the SEND strategy, special educational needs and disability strategy. That again is really, ties in with the children with disabilities service, but really is about improving outcomes for children who have special needs. And there's a particular need to work with children who've got SENH, social and educational, I can't remember the acronym, those with social and emotional health needs. We've got a community learning strategy, and that they run the 50 Futures programme, and we've also got a learning and education strategy. There's also then targeting young people who are NEET, that's not in education, employment and training, and thinking back to our care leavers service and the work that, the focus that is being particularly put now on care leaving services. We need to make sure that the children for whom we are corporate parents have sufficient and quality education, employment and training for them to move into. Inclusion and specialist strategic plan, working with schools, and we've also got, and I haven't mentioned it particularly so far, but Children's Services has got the Youth Justice Plan to deliver. Now, YOS, our Youth Offending Service, which is also joint with Redcar and Cleveland, have a strong preventative element in there now as well. I think that's really important to align with early help. And every directorate across the council has these next three priorities. It's about embedding our corporate values so that within the directorate, so that we make staff feel more valued. And if they do, then they're more likely to stay with us and grow with us and develop. Improving staff communication so that staff feel more valued and engaged. And both Rachel and I do a significant amount to get the messages out there. We do weekly briefings. If any member would like to join a weekly briefing for either part or whole to come along and see what we do, you'd be very welcome, and to introduce your staff. I think staff would really value it. So they're Tuesday mornings between 9 and 9:30, and we talk about what we've been doing. We talk about good practice. We talk about things that we'd like to get involved in. We talk about training. And you may have also heard that I always end with a joke. They're always fantastic jokes. I am a budding comedian, not, and sometimes they fall flat on their face, but you're welcome to come along. And we also need to deliver our budgeted savings and initiatives. So the next slide, I think we're coming to the end. There are three really important national initiatives that will influence the work of Children's Services and, yes, children's social care. Although you can see the first one is Strong Schools with Great Teachers for Your Child, the white paper. We also have a green paper, which is for children with special educational needs and disabilities. And we have the Independent Review of Children's Social Care, and they've all recently been published. And they all talk to each other. I'm delighted that these three initiatives all talk to each other. So again, where are children safest? They're safest in schools. What do children need? The best education possible. What do vulnerable children need? They need support from across the partnership. SEND are, again, they need the right support in the right place at the right time. Often families who have a child with an educational need or a disability have a lot to cope with, and they often, but the system that's national, the national system for education, health and care plans is quite challenging, and this paper aims to streamline that. And the Independent Review of Children's Social Care sets out some quite wide-ranging reforms that proposes some quite wide-ranging reforms, particularly focusing on some aspects of early help, but also looking at different types of social workers, as can I say, in terms of experts around child protection. Also looks at things like regional commissioning, so that fits into where have we got enough placements for children. So, and I could talk for a very long time about all three of them, but again, I won't, because again, we'll be here till probably tomorrow lunchtime. So I think that might be the last slide, or have I got more? Main issues and challenges. So here we are, improving outcomes. I've said that, keep saying that, it's really important. We have immense scrutiny from Ofsted, as you know. We have intense scrutiny from the Department of Education. We also have scrutiny from Scrutiny, and we are also scrutinised internally. So one of our challenges is that we are under immense scrutiny. We rise to that. We are transparent about things. We are as transparent as we can possibly be. But you can understand, I'm sure, that regular 3 monthly visits from Ofsted, the Department of Education reviews, all of these things are need preparing for. Well, we do them, of course we do them, but they do put pressure on. And the mechanics of improvement as well. The improvement board, as I said, Celinda's service, strategic services, the whole mechanics of an improvement board, the whole arrangements around Ofsted monitoring visits and Department of Education reviews are a challenge. So Middlesbrough's demographics and the consequential demand for children's services. I know that I don't need to tell you as members, that Middlesbrough has its challenges in terms of poverty and in terms of demand. And poverty drives demand, and we do have a very high level of demand in Middlesbrough, probably the highest in the country. And of course, if we have that and we don't have as stable a workforce as we would like to have, and that we are working towards, and that moves into my next point, recruiting and retaining experienced permanent social workers, that is a massive challenge. And that, of course, can affect staff morale. Finances. We do have issues and challenges around finances, that can't be denied. Cost of agency staff, because we are not recruiting as we would like to, and in particular the rising costs of external residential placements. Social care, led by Rachel, have worked hard to bring down the number of external residential placements, but over time the costs of those placements have gone up. And in this time of increasing inflation and the fact that the placements aren't out there, you can put out placement search after placement search. And also with the complexity of some of our young people's needs, we are looking at very high costs. So although the numbers come down, the cost hasn't. Growing and developing partnership working. We know that in the words of the proverb, it takes a village to raise a child. It takes partners working together, and I would very much include corporate colleagues and members. Partnership working takes a village to raise a child. And of course, a main issue for us, a main challenge for us, which I go back to really, is our three young people at the beginning of this presentation, and that's rolling out Middlesbrough Children Matter across the town. So hopefully that gives you an overview of where we are in children's services, but in particular here in children's social care. And if it's okay, Chair, I'd just like to ask Rachel if there's anything she'd like to add.
That's fine, thank you. Anything, Rachel?
No, that's fine, Sue, thank you.
Thank you. Does any member of the panel have any questions for Sue? Mary, would you like to come in?
I don't have a question at the moment, but I think it's amazing. What I would be interested in, Sue, is popping in to the meeting. So did you say Tuesday morning?
They're online, Councillor Nugent. So you can join online and you can introduce yourself, because I certainly, and it is across children's services, and some of our business partners join as well.
Yeah.
But it will give you a flavour of where we are and what we do in terms of our values and in terms of information. And staff are often, well, but usually always delighted that members take an interest in what they do, because I mean, I know you're not distant at all, but to a frontline social worker, sometimes it can seem that. And so you are very, very, very welcome. In fact, I would strongly encourage you coming on and saying hi.
I would be interested. I think it's amazing the changes that have been made and the work that you have put in, Sue. However, sadly, sometimes for people like myself that's out and about in the communities, the story can be very different sometimes when we're looking at young people and behavior and the things that happen in some of these communities and the lack of response from some of the resources such as police and that. And sometimes that tells a very different story. But your work is amazing, Sue. Thank you.
That's really interesting comments, Councillor Nugent, and perhaps we could expand on that at some point, because it is very much about working in partnership. And I feel, and Rachel may want to add, that our partnership with the police has grown, particularly over the last sort of 4 months, 5 months, in terms of working together. We did find ourselves, trying to I suppose, match our resources better, work better together. And I think we now have a sort of formal agreement, but how we want to work together between us. And I have high hopes for that. But of course, resources are finite as well. That's
I understand that, Yeah, I understand that it's very difficult for the police at the moment. But recently, I have experienced areas of concern, which would involve a younger, for example, teenage group, and some of the things that have happened, and where the police have not responded at all, and which has really upset parents, the parents that this type of thing has affected. So, sadly, that is the fact.
Yeah, we have some significant challenges, Councillor Nugent, from some what we call organised crime gangs, OCGs, and you may be aware of them, but their should I say, in my view, their power is growing, so I chair, as I may have mentioned before, a risk management group, which is those young people who are at most risk, but also can present risks. And the stretch, what's the right word? The involvement of organised crime groups within the young people that we're talking about can be significant.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Nugent.
Thank you, Sue.
Councillor Nugent, could I just stop you there, please? Because I've got 2 other council members waiting to come in. Could I come back to you, please?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson? Councillor Wilson, you're on mute.
Thank you. So, do we have any privately run children's homes that we oversee?
We don't oversee privately owned children's homes. We have our own local authority children's homes, which we have total responsibility for. And as I've said, they're all good or outstanding homes. We're very proud of the quality of care that's offered.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Udin?
Yeah, Chair, thank you. Thanks very much. So, as usual, that's a very good presentation. Can I just ask you, well, I've got a couple of questions actually. First one, the safeguarding team with the joint working with the Middlesbrough and Redcar, how is it going? Can I just ask,
We're quite unusual. It's in that the safeguarding partnership is joint with Redcar and Cleveland. There are only quite a few that happen up and down the country. It's not about direct work as such. It's about bringing together information. It's about looking at safeguarding performance and progress across partner agencies, and partner agencies are very much part of it. The chair at the moment is Catherine Bolton, who's the DCS in Redcar and Cleveland, who are incidentally having their full inspection as we speak. So it will be interesting to see how they get on. And we also have an independent scrutineer who does some deep dives into what we're doing. And she's called Edwina Harrison, and she's a very experienced safeguarding consultant. And these are normal arrangements. The safeguarding partnership has grown over the last year. It wasn't in the greatest of places, I would say, a year ago, but I think as partnership working has grown, and as we've had a chair and some, I think it has developed, particularly over the last year. Rachel, do you want to say anything more about the safeguarding partnership? Because we've still got some work there to do, I think.
Yeah, I think I suppose it comes back to the previous question that Councillor Nugent mentioned as well. So the safeguarding partnership is the engine room really where all the partners get together to look at the issues faced in an area. So the police are a really active part of the safeguarding partnership. And in some respects, joining up with Redcar and Cleveland is helpful because we see similar issues across the boundaries because the areas are quite small. So I think we have, I would agree, Sue, seen improved engagement with those key agencies from health to the police to the voluntary sector organisations. And we are seeing a stronger partnership now than we had previously. So I would see that as going from strength to strength.
Good.
Councillor Odin, can I ask, do members get the safeguarding newsletter? And would it be useful if you had it? I can make sure that it's sent out perhaps through Joe or Sylvia or, but we've just had one come out. Joe, I'll send a copy to you and you can have a look at the sort of events that are being put in. So, for example, we have at the moment going on across Middlesbrough and Redcar and Cleveland, and actually involving Hartlepool and Stockton as well, because we sometimes have some work because it's preventing suicide in adolescents development workshop. So you can see the sort of activities that are going on. So Joe, I'll send it to you, and I'll also mention, I think, or perhaps you could take to Sylvia whether we could send it directly out to members as a whole. I think it's something that people can read if they choose.
Sure, yeah, that'll be useful. That'll be very useful, yeah.
Councillor Hoodin, could I just come in with a quick question on safeguarding while we're on the subject? Do we have a staff member that attends the South Tees Safeguarding Board, Sue?
Yes, we do. It isn't called a board anymore. It's the partnership that we've just been talking about.
Oh, right. So, thank you. Thank you.
So, and we have, it's at 3 levels. There's well, it's actually at 4 levels. There's a safeguarding partnership, safeguarding exec, which is like the oversight. There's a safeguarding partnership. There's a sort of wider partnership in terms of all agencies working with children, and that's overseen by the chief execs as well. So various colleagues sit on various levels of the partnership arrangement.
Right, thank you. Councillor Odin, would you like to ask your second question?
Can I just supplementary or comment on this one, on this question, is that okay, If you can just comment on this,
Yes.
The reason I asked this question, obviously, as you know, many years ago, we were working together, Cleveland County Town, many years ago. I was younger then, obviously, And then in 1996, obviously, the split went to the unitary authorities. And if I say it's I, would be wrong. I mean, we as a team, I think at that time, we were really concerned splitting team into the unitary authority, especially in the safeguarding work and then the children's services. We did predict, to probably work for the authority together in particular issues, So I'm really so pleased now, seeing this working together, the Middlesbrough and the Redcar, obviously you're sharing, information with the others as well. So I think it's absolutely brilliant, That's the reason I asked, because we were concerned when we were going to unitary authorities at the time. Because partnership working, it's really helpful, it really helps in many ways,
We do share other services with Redcar and Cleveland. I suppose the most significant that we haven't mentioned is the youth offending service. That's joint with Redcar and Cleveland as well. And also some of our education service, the STARS service. You'll have to forgive me. I don't remember the record. I can't recite you the acronym. Rachel, can you remember the acronym?
Oh, sorry, I was going to say something else.
Okay. Well, I thought you were leaping in to help me then. But it's for children with, I think, with visual and hearing challenges. I may be wrong on that. I do apologise, but thank you, Rachel.
Sorry, I was just going to add, because just to add, Councillor Udden, because whilst we have a South Tees Safeguarding Children Partnership, which was just discussed, we have Tees-wide procedures. So all of the local authorities through their Safeguarding Partnership agrees Tees-wide procedures. So all of the procedures that we might have around, for example, managing concealed pregnancies or pre-birth work, or, you know, supporting young people who are at risk of suicide, they're all Tees-wide procedures. So that Tees group comes together on a regular basis. So there's some consistency in terms of how we're dealing with certain issues.
That's great to hear, Rachel. Thank you. That's great. Yeah. My second question was again, so that was the recruitment and retention. You know, so how is it going? I know we had over the years, you know, we struggle. I mean, it's not the local issue; it's national issues. You know, so how are we managing at this point? Do you think, you know, we're managing okay?
Rachel leads on the workforce strategy, so I'll hand over to Rachel at this point, if that's okay, Councillor Udden.
Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Udden, it's a challenge, isn't it? You've acknowledged the national problem, the problem nationally, it's a problem regionally, and actually the independent care review, Josh McAllister's commenting on you know, on that issue, and making some suggestions about what might help. You know, in Middlesbrough, we have made progress in terms of recruiting more permanent staff and reducing the number of agency staff. We've done quite a few things really in terms of through the workforce strategy, in terms of recruiting permanent experienced staff, increasing those numbers. We've had a really good look at what we offer in Middlesbrough. We've looked at our pay and conditions. We've looked at recruitment and retention offers. But we haven't just looked at that, because pay isn't just what brings social workers into work in a local authority. We've done a lot of work on trying to make caseloads more manageable, because if you ask any social worker what is the most important issue, it's around caseloads being manageable. It's around receiving good support and supervision from the first line managers. And it's about having a vibrant and good learning and development offer to develop them as professionals. So we've had a good look at that, and we've kind of made sure that we can, make progress there. But we've also developed our Centre for Practice Excellence, which is our social work academy, because we acknowledge that we have to grow our own social workers as well. Yeah. So we get our newly qualified staff in, and we give them a really good start now. So our academy social workers come in, and they don't go out into their teams until the 6-month point. They stay in the academy. They get very small caseloads with very specific pieces of work that's linked to their learning and development, and they're managed really closely in a nurturing way, so that when they go out into the teams, you know, they're in a good place. So we've worked really hard around the offer to recruit more experienced staff, of which there aren't lots out there, Councillor Udden. It's a national problem, but also how can we grow our own? So newly qualified staff that are coming in and giving them the best start, so they want to stay with us. And we have had a significant success there.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Nice to hear. Yeah. Well, thanks, sir. Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you very much, Councillor Udden. Mary, did you want to come back in again?
No, not really. And not at the minute, Chair. No, thank you.
Thank you. Could you take your hand down, Mary, because the yellow hand.
Sorry, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's the way I was sitting, sorry.
Councillor Wilson, would you like to come in?
Yes, please. Well, 2 questions really. Rachel, could you expand on what you mean by academies?
We have created a social work academy, which is our way of describing where our newly qualified social workers that are just coming off the degree courses come into our academy. And that's a place where they get specialist support to kind of get the best start as a social worker, because we know that as soon as you come off your degree course as a brand new social worker, you know, we have to kind of, we have to sort of provide a good level of support so that people get the learning and development offer, get cases allocated to them in a controlled way. Because in the bad old days, probably when I was a newly qualified social worker, you started and got a full caseload. So it's about us being able to be able to give people the best start in Middlesbrough, so they're not overwhelmed, so they get good support and they get work in a managed way. It's just what we call our where social workers start, Councillor Wilson. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's more like an apprenticeship.
Yeah, a bit like that. Yeah, 6-month apprenticeship. That's a good way. That's a good way to describe it. We give them a 6-month apprenticeship, and we give them the best start before they become fully fledged social workers.
We might nick that phrase, Councillor Wilson.
We might. I like that.
Well, I keep trying to take my daughter to that, but she's actually got qualifications to go at the bottom of the ladder. But yeah, okay, we'll cross that bridge when it comes to it. The other question was partnerships with Edinburgh and Cleveland. Where does the junction fit in? How does the junction work with that?
Do you want me to answer that one, Sue?
Oh yeah, please.
Yeah. So the junction is a well-regarded voluntary sector organisation, Councillor Wilson, that we've worked with over a number of years. So they do a couple of things for us at the moment. Less around the partnership, because I don't know whether Redcar commission them, but in Middlesbrough we commission the junction around providing services to young carers. So they're a very important part of our early help service around young carers in the town. The second thing they do for us is they provide part of our youth service contract. So people may remember when the youth service contract went out, there were 3 organisations which were successful in the tendering process. So the Links provide our universal youth service, the Junction provide our targeted part of the youth service, and Middlesbrough Football Foundation provide the transitions. So there's a couple of areas we work with them. That's the youth service and young carers.
Right, it sort of explains a bit more. So, do they take like someone who's lacking friendship and they need to get out and about? Do they have minibuses available to take people out? A little bit like, are you aware of PSN, Person Support Network?
Sorry, I didn't
Are you aware
catch
of
that.
Person Support Network?
No, sorry.
Well, we pick up that idea. They take people out. It's more there. That's for adults, but I'm just wondering if they worked on the same basis where the junction would take the younger teenagers out, if you like.
The Junction do work with groups across the town, groups of young people, teenagers in their youth work capacity, in the youth service capacity, but they also would be doing one-to-one work with young people who were young carers, who we identify and refer into them. So yes, they do both of those things.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Alicia.
Thank you. Thank you. Can I just ask a couple of possibly there'll be one word answers for me, Sue. With regards to Gail's, does Gail's programme begin from birth?
Early help can be any age. It's not
Right.
early in years, it's early in the problem, as it were. So it's about nipping things in the bud, really. But it isn't just youngsters, it isn't just babies or youngsters. It can be a teenager who's, or a family where things are just not quite where they should be. So,
Yes.
So any age.
Yeah, thank you. And you know, each team you describe, team leaders to us.
Heads of service, yeah.
Yes, heads of service, sorry.
That's all right.
Can you, I've got the wrong word. Can you tell us, do they have teams that work under them?
Yes, they do. And we've just brought in, or Rachel's brought in a layer, as it were, called service managers. And actually, I think it's quite an exciting thing that's just happened recently. So I'm going to hand over to Rachel to tell you about our new service managers, which is fantastic.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Davison. We have, so to give you an example, Ben Short, who's the head of service in safeguarding. Ben's got 9 teams with 9 team managers, all of which have 6 social workers in the team. So that gives you an idea of what Ben's responsible for. But obviously managing 9 team managers who all have 100 odd cases each in the teams, we've, in order to improve the kind of performance, the quality, the management grip, and give social workers the right support, we've introduced a service manager in there. So we've been really successful. We've appointed 4 out of 5 service managers to date. who will work in Gail's service early help, in the front door and Amanda's service, in safeguarding Ben's service, and in children looked after in pathways. So that is a really good addition to the team, which offers additional support to team managers.
Right, thank you. So each team, there's so many members in each team in each section you spoke to us about. Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah,
We
I
can
understand
send-
totally now.
We can actually share the full structure, because we've
Yeah.
got the full
Yeah,
structure.
that would be
like
good.
that.
That would be
Yeah.
good. Thank you. Thank you.
And
That
it
would
gives
be
you an
really good.
idea of the scale
Yes,
of the
yes,
service.
yes.
'cause
The
it's
scale
big.
would be really
Yeah.
good. Yes, and also, so you mentioned the meetings you have at 9 and 9:30 on a Tuesday. Did you say?
Yeah.
Could we do some arrangement that maybe each member could attend at some time, and could we do
Well-
that through Joe if that's okay
Yeah.
with you?
We'll do your rota. You know, absolutely, you're all very welcome. Probably one or two at a time, I would
Yes,
say.
that's what I was thinking. I was thinking maybe one at a time.
Yeah, one at a time is absolutely fine, and then we can give you a slot to say who you are, what you do.
So
you know,
if-
and
Yeah,
yeah.
that would be lovely. And if members would let Joe know if they're interested in attending those meetings, and then we'll get Joe to inform or contact you, Sue or Rachel, regarding that. Also, Sue, I've had an invitation to a Middlesbrough Children Matter conference. Can you tell us anything about that? And are all members welcome?
Yes, yes, they are. And it's a conference. It's to celebrate Middlesbrough Children Matter. We've got a motivational speaker. We've got some developmental workshops. It's for partners across the agencies. Members are very welcome. I mean, it really is promoting and celebrating Middlesbrough Children Matter.
It's just that I received it online, and I thought, oh, I hadn't heard anything about it. So I do hope that all members have had an invitation to that. Did you want to come in, Rachel?
I was just going to add, we've also got the staff awards at the
Yes.
conference.
Yes,
So
yes.
Councillor Davison, we might be asking you to present one of the awards.
Not a problem, not a problem.
Yes, true. That would be good. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for that, Sue. Does anybody want to come in with one very quick question at all? No, so we can move on. Thank you both very much this morning for this so far. I know you'll both be remaining because we've got other things to discuss. Right, we would like to go now to agenda item number 5, which is setting our scrutiny panel work programme for 22-23. I would just like to recap with regards to 21-22. Sufficiency and permanency were covered. Locality working. We got regular updates relating to the outcomes of Ofsted monitoring from Sue. And we had a presentation developing and council-wide approach to children's services from the LGA Northeast, which was very, very, very good. And we also had a presentation with regards to SEND review update, and we had regular updates from Sue on COVID recovery within children's services. So I want to thank you all for your help with that and the panel's help. And these reports that we've done have gone through OSB and will be going to executive either in July or September. So I hope members, I know Mary hasn't got the documentation, but I do hope members have had a chance to have a look at our suggestions. Paragraph 5, excuse me, the topics to the panel, if you will see, the topics that came to us were from the Chief Executive, myself as chair of the panel, and a member of the public. That's the suggestions, which is a strategic plan, work plan 22-24, procedures for children protection plans, early intervention support, and transition from children's social care to adult social care. And I wanted that to include SENDs as well, when they go from childcare to adult care, the procedure. Any other suggestions anybody has? So has anybody, also we've got the topical issues. I hope you've all had a chance to have a look through this. Independent review of children's social care. Children's social care work shortage, which we've already spoke about this morning. And other updates we wanted. We'd like to see updates on the Ofsted on a regular basis from Sue, if that's okay, in our meetings. We're also going to look at the safeguarding, performance information and updates on previous reviews. Now, there's 3 main topics there. I wonder if anybody's got any suggestions, or which one would you prefer to go with? Can panel members let me know this? Or is there any suggestions from Sue and Rachel? Yes, Sue.
I think, Chair, the fact that you'll be overseeing, scrutinising the Ofsted improvement, I think that, and that's already on there, I think, and the
Yes.
overall progress of Middlesbrough Children Matter. But I think, you will be looking at those anyway, and we've also talked through the priorities. So I think that's, I wouldn't want to suggest anything else at this time.
Right, thank you. What, Rachel? Yes, please.
Just to make a comment about the second priority in terms of it says child protection procedures and early help. What that misses out, Councillor Davison, is that bit in the middle, which is our support to children in need. So I
Yeah.
don't know whether or not we kind of look at early help, children in need, and child protection, which covers that child's journey. That would be a suggestion, because I think there's maybe children in need in the middle of early help and child protection, which isn't accounted for there.
Right, thank you. Can we add that, Joe, please? Right, so which one do you think we should start with? Is any panel members got an opinion on this? No? Well, was somebody, Mary, were you going to speak there?
No, I wasn't, but I will give a suggestion, seeing you've asked me now. I would say children in need. I think that's very important. And I think there's a lot of issues around that today.
Right,
Okay,
thank you for
Chair.
that, Mary.
Thank you.
Councillor Hoodin, would you like to add anything? Is there anything?
No, I think, sorry, Chair. Yeah, I think I would agree with the Councillor Nugent that children needs, and as Rachel mentioned, the safeguarding issues together. That one come first, then probably the independent review of children's social care. I think that's more or less interrelated, isn't it? That's a topical issue, isn't it?
Yeah.
Can that be brought into that with the main ones? Do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we want to start with item number 2, which will include children in need.
Yeah. Is it item 2? Yeah. Yeah. That's the one. Yeah.
And then I'm hoping that we can do more than one in the next year.
Mm-hmm.
So can we go for the second one? Can we do the transition between childcare and adult care? The switch for children that are in care to adult care. Can we do that one as number 2? And then we'll do the strategic planning work plan as number 3. Let's hope we can get through all those 3 in a year. We'll have to work very hard.
Certainly, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, is that all right with everybody?
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
that's fine.
Oh, Teresa, I've just saw your hand. Oh,
yeah, I was going to ask at number 2, the going from children's care to adult care. I think that's very important. The transition is very important. So I would like to look at that. Sorry, I haven't said a lot today because.
I'm sorry you're not too good, Councillor Higgins, but thank you for attending. If there's anything you would like to email us anytime, you know, we're available. So let's go for, are we all in agreement? We're going to do procedure to child protection and then the transition. And if we can get through those two, I think we'll do very well. And we can include the third one. So can we all agree that?
Yeah.
Right, thank you very much for that. Right, now we go, is there anything else you require, Jo?
Sorry, Chair. No, I think that's fine. Yeah.
Right, thank you
we'll-
very much.
Yeah.
Can we go to Children's Services Improvement Journey, which is again by our Executive Director for Children's Services, and that's Sue Butcher. Thank you, Sue.
Thank you, Chair. And again, I will bring Rachel in as we go through. Okay, so here we are, our Ofsted monitoring visit, which was in March 22. And the report was, we got the final letter, as it were, in early May. I've got there, thank you to everyone for your support and for contributions towards making this visit a success. I would like to thank members on Scrutiny panel, particularly this Scrutiny panel, because you have been supportive of our progress all the way through. So the next slide, please. Again, our young people. I think I've lauded our young people enough for one session, so I'll move on. So just some context here. This was our third monitoring visit since the last full inspection, and we've also had a focused visit within that time. So we had 2 inspectors, 2 weeks preparation. They notify us when they're going to be coming in, and we get 2 weeks to prepare, although in reality we're preparing all of the time. And they had 2 days on site at the end of March. This one was significant in that it was the first monitoring visit, the first time since the full inspection 2.5 years ago that it was face-to-face. And, you know, thinking about it from a social work point of view, from a social worker's point of view, you know, sitting in face-to-face with an Ofsted inspector is a bit different from being online. So I'm glad that we've got into face-to-face before we face our full inspection. That's when we had the letter published, and the areas covered in the monitoring visit this time was matching. That's children, moving children into the right placements that can meet their need, making placement and decision making for children in care. So matching children to a placement, placing them in those placements, and decision making for children in care, and planning and achieving permanence for children. And that's for children moving to their forever homes. And you may remember that that was a significant deficit in our practice at the full inspection. So moving on, one thing, some important things that the inspectors found. We know ourselves well, and this is evidenced by our detailed improvement plan. We sweep up into the improvement plan what we know we need to improve, and what Ofsted identify as needing to improve. They felt our self-assessment, our SEF document, was accurate. Tony Parkinson talks very clearly about every feedback that we get. He asks the question, and do we know ourselves? And the Ofsted lead inspector said our self-assessment was spot on. So I'm very, very pleased about that. And we also know ourselves through our quality assurance processes. It's not just about compliance. It's not just about have we done. It's about how well have we done. Robust reviewing processes and panels, and audits, that learning loop from audits. So we identify where things aren't where they should be. We quantify that, we put training on, we development on, and then we test again whether that learning and development has happened. And we've already mentioned our Centre for Practice Excellence, which really does, it's our centre for collating learning and improvement. Okay, thank you. So permanence, forever homes from children. What did Ofsted say? There's a systemic framework for permanency planning. It's less reactive now, and it's more forward-looking. So we plan for children. We plan for children moving to their forever homes. We don't go, oh, we need to do that now. We plan for it. We've got stronger practice with children who have come into care more recently. And we think about permanence planning earlier. Permanency plans now include what we're calling parallel planning to avoid drift and delay. So we're not just doing one thing and thinking, oh, that's not really worked, and then doing another thing and doing another thing. We're actually looking at them in tandem. So we'll do this, but actually, if that doesn't work, then we've got a backup plan, as it were. Really gratifying. Social workers know children need permanence and they know what they need to do to achieve it. We have regular and high quality supervision actively, and they actively contribute to early permanence planning. And we have a monthly permanence monitoring group called PMG, and they track and quality assure both plans and progression towards permanence. Thank you. So positives. Children in our care are looked after children, are visited regularly. And most social workers know their children well and have built trusting relationships with them. Our direct work with children is seen as good, and it's calibrated to a child's age and understanding. So social workers aren't just tipping up with a game that they play with a 4-year-old or an 8-year-old or a 12-year-old. They are actually thinking about what work can we do? What can we do with a child that's entertaining, it's fun for the child, it's thought-provoking for the child or young person, but actually supports the work that we're doing. And children's voices are informing their planning, we're listening to them. We also have family time, and that's contact between children who are in our care and significant people in their lives. So Ofsted felt that our children benefit from safely assessed family time. It's safe for these children to be having contact with birth family members, for example. But family time with wider family members is also well considered. So I'm a granny lots of times over. And actually, if my grandchildren were in the unfortunate position of being in our care, in the care of a local authority, I would want contact with them as well as the parents. You know, it's important to keep those relationships going. And also brother and sister. Where those brother and sister, we do what we call together and apart assessments that are completed quickly. And if we don't feel it's in those brother and sister, sadly, we feel that it's not in the best interests of brothers and sisters to have direct, can be in the same placement, and sometimes that is the case. We make sure that we maintain the relationships between them. So moving on to the next positives. Children are brought into our care in a more timely way, and we have better court applications. So we use the courts, we work with the courts in a more constructive way. We have good feedback from Judge Matthews, and if you get good feedback from Judge Matthews, you know you're doing okay. And also from the from CAFCAS, who and CAFCAS provide, that's where our guardians, our children's guardians, are based. Child permanence reports are sensitively written, and the sort of next but one bullet point, children's records are written directly to the child. So I've noticed that particularly in child permanence reports, which I read because I make the decisions about whether children should be placed for adoption. So instead of saying, I met with Joe on the 25th of August and he was playing in the garden and I went out there, it would say, Joe, when I met with you on the 25th of June, we went into the garden and we played swing ball. So you're writing directly to the child rather than impersonally. Social workers understand life story work, and children will be able to look back and see the thought that went into planning for their forever homes. Rachel, do you want to add anything there?
No, I'm just incredibly proud of what Ofsted were able to see on children's records and in the discussions with social workers, because, you know, when you look back to the last full inspection, this is, you know, really significant progress in terms of permanence. I mean, some of those comments that went into the letter, that children will be able to look back and see the thought that went into planning for their forever homes. I think people will agree that that's really powerful. It's absolutely what we should be doing, but it's just really gratifying that Ofsted were able to see all the evidence of that.
Thank you, Rachel. And just some rounding up positives actually on the next page. Thank you, Caroline. Planning meetings, supervision reviews are well recorded. So we've got evidence. We show our workings out. They provide clear oversight of the plans and actions for the best interests of the children. And by planning and by thinking about what we're doing, children are experiencing less delay. And our independent reviewing officers have improved oversight of children's plans. So they are independent of the casework, but they're looking at the casework more. And they are actually, instead of waiting from one review meeting to the next review meeting, they're going into casework files, they're carrying out midpoint reviews. Is all that's happening, is all that should be happening. And the next slide, please. So we can't sit on our laurels, and I know that we say that after every visit, but it is true that we can't. Points to consider. There is still some impact on children from a legacy of absent or poor planning. Even though it was, well over 2 years ago, there are still some children who are coming through, as it were, who have still been affected by what was very poor practice. Some children have experienced earlier unplanned placement moves and consequent disruption and instability. There are a number of children placed with family members. I'm going to get Rachel to talk a little bit more about the next 2 bullet points, actually, Rachel, because I think you've got probably more in-depth knowledge about them. So I'll hand over to you.
So bullet point number 3 is that Ofsted saw that there was a small number of children who were placed with family members who hadn't been approved as connected carers. And what we're absolutely clear about now is that decisions have been made with the court not to move those children. So when we place with family members need to be assessed as foster carers against the stranger foster care regulations, and sometimes they don't quite meet up to those foster carer regulations. And in a small minority of cases, on balance, we make a decision that actually it's in the child's best interests to be there, but that always has the oversight of the court. So Ofsted need to tell us that we have got a small number of children in those situations. But if you go down to the bottom bullet point, it says leaders are aware of these children. They all have individual assessments, and there's oversight to mitigate against any risk. So that's the first bullet point. The first bullet point Sue's asked me to comment on. The second one is around children with complex needs in unregistered children's homes. People may be aware that Ofsted have got a very strong agenda now around all children's homes needing to be regulated with Ofsted, and there are some out there in the market that aren't regulated with Ofsted. Because of sufficiency issues, we sometimes have to place children in unregulated.
Was that Margaret? Margaret, I'm in this meeting still.
Sorry, Mary's not on mute. So Councillor Nugent's not on mute. So we do have a small minority of children who are placed in unregistered children's homes. But again, I take you to the bottom bullet point, which says that we're aware of those children. Ofsted were satisfied that there was good management grip and that children were in safe places with individual risk assessment to mitigate against any risk. So does that explain that, Sue?
Yes, thank you, Rachel. So moving on to what I think is the last slide. Yeah, so a bit of a roundup here. Senior leaders know their services well. We talked earlier on about how our self-evaluation document was, they said, spot on. And social workers spoke positively about the determined efforts to make improvements and create the conditions for good social work practice. And that's through clear expectations and standards. They value the support from their team members. They value the training and development programme and the growing supportive working culture. Again, as a reminder, this monitoring visit focused on the middle of the service, the safeguarding and care planning aspect of the service. We have other services, as you know from the previous presentation. So this really relates specifically to that part of the service. Not that you won't see many of these aspects in other parts of the service, but you'll also see some challenges, different challenges than we've mentioned here. So what's next? Representatives from the Department of Education, and I talked about one of the challenges being the scrutiny that we get. Representatives from the Department of Education met with frontline staff on the 17th of May and fed back to us the views of frontline staff, which were broadly positive. And they will also meet with partners and corporate leaders this month. I think the meetings are happening this week, last week and this week. So they'll be feeding back to us what's the views of partners, what's the views of across the council of how we're doing and what we're doing. And then we are facing another Ofsted monitoring visit. We're expecting it in mid-July. We think somewhere around the 14th of July, if you sort of like work back as to where we might get a visit and, you know, taking into account school holidays, those sorts of issues. And this particular monitoring visit will be focusing on early help. It will be focusing on the multi-agency children's hub and on the assessment service, all of which we mentioned in the previous presentation. But we have also been pointed towards the fact that Ofsted will be looking at our emergency duty team, that's our out of hours team, and LADO work, that's our local authority designated officer work. And that's work where there are allegations made against professionals working with children. So quite a wide scope, lots of preparation to be done, and we don't wait for Ofsted's notification. We start preparing as soon as we can. My phrase, as you probably know, is lots to do, but better place to do it. Thank you.
Chair, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, everybody, I'm on mute now. Sorry. I'd like to thank Sue and Rachel for that. That very positive. Has anybody any questions? Councillor Wilson?
Yeah, so how many children do we have in foster care now? Do we know about that one?
In terms of looked after children, Rachel, is it 513 at the moment? Just sort of like early teens looked after children, which is from a high of 702. But you know, it's sort of plateauing a little bit at the moment. But generally, we are still working to bring the numbers down. The exact number in foster care, is it 420, Rachel, something along those lines, or have I got that completely wrong?
We've got 21 in internal. I'll do the maths now, live stream maths. We've got 21 in internal residential, 49 in external residential. So 70 in residential, Councillor Wilson, from 513. So Sue's about right. The majority, you can see the majority of children are in foster care.
Right. No, it's lovely. Yeah, thank you. It's an improvement of what we had, though, isn't it? Going back over.
We've made significant improvements on a number of things in terms of our looked after children population, Councillor Wilson. We've reduced the number in external residential, so are those high cost placements. We've increased the number that are looked after in our own children's homes, so we've increased in-house occupancy. We've increased the number of in-house foster carers, Middlesbrough foster carers, significantly, and we've reduced the number of external fostering placements we buy. So it is an improving picture overall. And like you say, there's sort of 420 odd children in foster care, which is the majority of our looked after population.
Very good. Thank you. Very good, Sue.
Thank you. Just one thing, Sue. With regards to the presentation you've just given us, I was so pleased to hear that we make sure our children keep in touch with siblings if they're not all. I know the aim is to keep them together, but if this is possible, I'm so pleased to hear that we do keep them in contact, and also with grandparents, because grandparents are so important.
I know.
Being a grandparent myself, I know how important it is with your grandchildren. And I think this is such a positive thing that the children are still keeping contact with siblings and other members of families. Thank you for that. Is there any other questions? Councillor Udin?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, there's another question anyway. I just wanted to comment. You know, obviously I echo everything Chair said, and I think it's been a brilliant. You know, it's very positive, and especially Rachel just mentioned about this external placement. In the past, we were really concerned about this all the high cost external placement. You know, so they are obviously a lot shorter now and like fewer now. So it's absolutely brilliant. Well done, and it's a very nice improvement journey. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Councillor Uden. I'd like to thank all your team, Sue and Rachel, for all the work they've done, and thank them all from us as a panel, and just keep up the good work. Thank you. Is
Thank
there
you. As I've
anybody
said,
else?
still lots to do.
Yeah.
We know there's still lots to do, but we are up for doing it.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so pleased about that. Thank you. Can we now go on to, thank you for that, everybody. Agenda item number 7, which is the OSB update. The last meeting for OSB was on the 11th of May. The executive forward working plan was discussed, along with we had executive members update from Councillor Mason, executive member for young adults and political engagement, and Councillor Grange, executive member for neighbourhood safety. We also had the chief executive's update. We also had school exclusion, feedback from school visits, so many of the panel, and we had both our reports at OSB, sufficiency and permanency, and locality working for children's services perspective. And the next meeting of OSB is tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Thank you for that. Agenda item number 8 is which is attached to the report, is the schedule of meetings and dates for the remainder of the year. Can we agree these, please? Did you want to come in, Councillor Uden?
Please, Chair, yeah, if possible, yeah. Unfortunately, obviously, I've worked my plan in line with this last year's, you know, about I didn't realize, you know, we'll be moving and changing dates and so on. Unfortunately, the next 4 meetings in this clash with my work meeting. I'm afraid I won't be able to take part in them unless if there are any flexibility to change. So every 4 of them, so the next 4 until 15th of November. Every day, same time, I've got a meeting with my work meeting, unfortunately.
Are we, what time does your meeting actually finishes, Councillor Uden?
Finishes around 1:30.
Yes.
Is there any way we could put it in the afternoon? I mean, I don't know. Well, it's got to fit in with everybody, you know. Yeah.
It may be impossible for me, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah.
That's why I moved it to suit myself, to be quite honest with you. But can we look at it and come? I'll talk with Joe about it and come back to you, Councillor Uden, because you're a very important member of this panel, and I'd like to see if we can fit you in. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much.
Is there any other day? Could we change day, do you think?
Well, Tuesdays are my biggest, you know, the work things, you know, often Monday and Tuesday, you know, they're pretty engaged. Other days will be fine. But again, we have other scrutiny panels as well.
Yes. I'll talk with Joe about it and come back to you on that one, Councillor.
Yeah, that's brilliant if you can, yeah.
Thank you very much for that.
No problem. Cheers. Thank you very much.
Any other comments? No? Thank you all very, very much for attending this morning. It's been a very, very important and forward planning meeting, and I'd like to wish you all very best for the rest of the day. If you get a chance, I hope you can enjoy the sun. I'm sure Rachel and Sue won't be able to, but I know you're very busy. So thank you all for your attendance. And Joe, could you stay online for me? Thank you, everybody.